have Mr. David Ellis is joining us all the way from Barbados. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We're fine. How are you doing in Barbados this morning?
Oh, well, it's a bit rainy. You know, we've been getting a lot of wind and some measure of rain, more so than we would normally have at this time of the year. It's a bit chilly too, but it's a good morning nonetheless.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we're now talking about this Clico issue. So we just want to know what's the latest update with the Clico issue?
So much has been happening with Clico. You know that there has been a discussion about this company and its collapse from 2009 in Trinidad and Tobago and the ripple effect that it has had across the entire Eastern Caribbean, not only here in Barbados, but the subsidiary, British American, has also created a lot of tension among people who bought into what were called executive flexible premium annuities, or EFPAs. As it stands right now, there's been a commission of inquiry going on in Trinidad and Tobago that has been on since last year, and sittings continue in that regard. Last week there were some startling revelations there, and under judicial management in Barbados, there have also been startling revelations coming out of a forensic audit which has been done by the Canadian firm called Deloitte. Indeed, they have said that even though these revelations have come to light, it is their desire to have further investigations because they can't find certain documents. And when we say revelations, what are we talking about? We're talking about something in the vicinity of $183 million from, and that's US dollars, from the insurance company Clico Life being siphoned out to other companies within the group and appearing to satisfy a rather lavish lifestyle and a high-end approach from some of the people who have been involved with the company.
Okay.
Fingers have been pointed so far at the former executive chairman, Mr. Leroy Paris. But one other major development in Barbados has been a situation where the audit has identified some $3.3 million, Barbados dollars that is, which passed through the law firm of the late Prime Minister David Thompson, who was the lawyer to Clico in Barbados and also a lawyer and friend to Mr. Paris. Now this money was supposed to go through the business, the law firm, as legal fees approved by the very person who got the money in the end, Mr. Paris. So that has created quite a lot of controversy and stir in Barbados, and there was a political meeting on Sunday evening. The opposition Barbados Labour Party, led by Owen Arthur, held a meeting calling for justice for the people who have not been able to get their money from Clico, because in the midst of what they've heard out of Trinidad, where there's been talk of secret accounts in Switzerland pointing to Lawrence Dupre and bad faith in the agreement between the government and Clico, where it was agreed that one company was going to be available to the government for sale, but then Clico, according to the evidence, went behind the government's back, sold the company, and then put the money in a Swiss account. All of these things are the things that are at the fore of this discussion, and one should not confuse what is happening now with the other issue, which is, can the people who are investors in Clico get back their money? That's a separate discussion, which is based upon whatever the arrangements are and what can be made by Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean governments and companies that are involved, there's a suggestion, a very strong indication that Sagicor has an interest in the life insurance company. But that does not address the whole question of the EFPAs, where people have invested thousands of dollars in some instances millions of dollars. The big issue that we are discussing right now is corporate governance. How was the company run? To what standard? And one of the significant things that has come out in recent days is that a number of directors, some have kept silent, but some have said they did not know what was happening. That's a shocker to people in Barbados, because if you are a company director, you are supposed to know what is happening.
Okay. Right. So what does this exactly mean for Grenada? There are also policy holders and investors in Grenada. So what does it mean for us here?
It means that you, like everybody else in the region, still have to await the final outcome of the negotiations and the being made to keep the life insurance company going. And at the same time, find a mechanism by which the people who invested in the EFPAs can at least get back the principal that they invested. That remains a very difficult issue at the moment. And what you can look at coming out of all this discussion about corporate governance is ultimately, will enough information emerge that average people who might not get back their money can take legal action against some of the principals who have been involved in this company and who may at the end of the process be considered to have handled the situation in a manner that requires that you go after them to get your money. That's where it leaves you and the rest of the people in the Caribbean who have invested in these EFPAs.
Okay. What does this mean for other insurance companies and, well, the EFPAs? How are people going to see the EFPAs now? Even though this is just Clico, what about the other companies that offer the same services?
Well, I am unaware of who else is offering them, because it's very difficult to see how anybody can be offering EFPAs right now in a climate where there is a strong warning coming out of this and previous developments. Because, people lose sight of the fact that in Jamaica, the Jamaican financial system collapsed back in the 1990s. Jamaica has had a string of incidents where they have had to beef up their regulatory framework. But unfortunately, what is happening in the Caribbean is that the information flow is not as strong as it ought to be. And the narrow nationalism and insularity that grips this region makes it appear as though it only matters when it happens on your turf, ignoring completely the full implications of what it means when it happens in another Caribbean country, because there lies the lesson in trying to correct things in your own country to avoid the same thing happening. But many of us in the region have ignored that altogether. It is clear that if people come to you and offer you too much money, more money than what the market is offering, you need to ask questions. Right. So whether it's an EFPA or it is called something else, or it turns out to be what is called a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid, the issue remains the same. If you are going to go after what you see as a huge return on the investment, the bigger the return, the bigger the risk.
Right.
And that is the implication for anybody in a financial organization that is offering a large sum of money or big interest on the money that you put down. That in a nutshell is where it lies. So you got to look around and see who else is offering attractive rates, and to then ask the question, how can they do so? On what basis? And the truth of the matter is that average people are not in the best position to make those decisions. It is largely within the confines of the expertise of people who have been trained or have worked in these areas, and therefore you have to ask questions if you are going to take large sums of money. I know people in other Caribbean countries who sold businesses or sold houses and put all the money in one place.
Right.
The FBAs, and that too is not recommended. You are supposed to diversify your portfolio. Don't put
Right.
all your eggs in any one basket.
Okay, well, with all of that said, tell me now, what is the likelihood of people actually getting back their money? The
But that
investors and
comes back to the
policyholders.
same point that we raised before, which
Right.
is
No, but I'm asking
that
you personally, what do you
likelihood
think?
the likelihood is dependent on the arrangements which are being made between the government of Barbados and Sagicor, as I understand it, to eventually work out this arrangement where the portfolio, the life portfolio, can be taken over by another company. This is the key.
Right.
And having worked out that, then we still have to determine, so how are we going to deal with that other side of the portfolio, which is the EFPAs, which has been the major issue in this whole situation.
Right. I would just like you to reiterate, for instance, just for the ordinary man like myself who is thinking about joining such a company, what sort of advice would you have for them, so that we know for sure the company that we may invest in does not end up in this situation like the Clico situation now?
Well, the truth of the matter is that you need advice from people who are skilled in those areas. If you have no knowledge whatsoever, then look for somebody who is able to look at the balance sheet and things like that. Bear this in mind though, it isn't to say that Clico has been without warning. As far back as 1988 in Trinidad, the supervisor of insurance in Trinidad and Tobago was talking about Clico and raising a red flag. Back in the 1990s, on a number of occasions, red flags were raised. One of the things that people are not talking about with respect to Clico is the fact that it had so much reach across this region. It was involved in developmental projects. It was doing housing. It was into forestry. It was into things that other financial organizations kind of shied away from. It made Clico attractive to governments. Governments supported Clico on what they did. That is not all. We wait to see what all the inquiry will reveal about the extent to which Clico funded political campaigns in the Caribbean. Because you scratch my back, I scratch yours. If you put money in a campaign across the region, it is understood that you will also be given some measure of not only protection, but things will be extended to you from time to time. So you had a mix where, in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, when the red flags were being raised in the 1990s, one of the newspapers was reporting that Lawrence Dupre was financing the Prime Minister's daughter's education in London. So when you have that kind of relationship, it becomes all the more important for you, the average person, to seek advice. But you can be duped, because if you are given the sense that the government that you have elected, with all the expertise that is available to it, sees nothing wrong, and if governments, for instance, will find all types of means by which, for instance, even their national insurance schemes can be caught up in investing in something like Clico, well, naturally, the average person is going to say, well, if all these people are doing it, and if the company appears to be so successful, the company is into methanol, it is into rum, all types of spirits, it's into real estate. I mean, you're saying, well, this is a company that is booming. It can't seem to lose. So against that backdrop, you go with the flow. Instead of going with the flow, the lesson really is we have to ask the right questions.
Right. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Ellis. Hopefully, you can stay in touch with us as you know the situation unfolds and keep us up to date with everything.
Thank you very much. Have
Thank
a wonderful
you.
day.
All right,
All
same
right,
to you.
thanks. You too. All
All
right,
right.
so that was Mr. David Ellis, a journalist at OCM Networks. He was joining us via Skype from Barbados, and he was just speaking about the Clico issue, telling us exactly what's going on.
And of
So,
course, his message is to ask questions, seek advice. You know, we've had cases in the past where companies have come up offering you these great investment opportunities, huge returns, and you know, a lot of people have lost their money in history. We've had it here, we've had it all around the Caribbean. So his advice is seek advice, ask questions. You know, don't just look at it and think that it's all good, but ask the right people.
yeah,
Yeah.
well said.